On a cold morning of May 24, 1941, after the clash of the two mighty kings of the ocean, the Bismarck sank the pride of the British Royal Navy, the HMS Hood, and while the HMS Prince of Wales is on her way to a far distance as she retreats due to a medium damage by German ships and malfunctioning turrets and unable to counterattack. But that is not the end of the story. The German ships suffer a mild damage as the Prince of Wales leave a mark to the Bismarck. The Prince of Wales hit the Bismarck 3 times. First at the catapult plane, including officer's boat, just right at the back of the ship's funnels. Second at the port side hull right below the side armor belt, that caused flood inside the auxiliary boiler and machinery room, and caused Bismarck 9 degrees port list, and the bow trimmed down of about 2 meters. Third at the forward bow, the shell passed through, from port side to starboard side, that the holes caused the Bismarck lose thousands of tons of fuel. The Operation Rainabung is no longer credible, due to the damage that affects her ability, and lower the speed down to 28 knots. The German believes that the British Royal Navy is preparing their forces to hunt them. The hunt begins. Without knowing, the German ships was still shadowed by British heavy cruisers, the HMS Suffolk and HMS Norfolk, equipped with a highly new type of radar, with them, the HMS Prince of Wales. The group under the command of Admiral John Tovey, the HMS King George V, HMS Repulse, and HMS Victorious, had reports and informations of German ships' positions, but the thing was that Admiral Tovey's position was far about 350 miles away. The fact that the Bismarck was damaged, she was still able to cruise at the speed of 28 knots, that was the same speed of the British ships that chasing them. At that distance, the British ships has no chance to reach the German battleship, for both sides had similar speeds, unless the Bismarck slowed down. May 24, 1941, afternoon, the bad weather took the advantage of the Bismarck, and turned to full starboard to engage the British group who tracked them down. At that point, the Prinz Eugen took another course undetected, and cruise away to take down the British allies that crossed the Atlantic. The German ship continues her course, knowing that the British ships is on her port side, in a far distance. Hours later, the British ship, HMS Victorious, changed her course, to make her range close enough to the Bismarck, and launch planes with torpedo bombers, to take damage and slow down the German battleship. The Bismarck was alarmed that the British planes was detected towards their position, and immediately opened fire. Luckily, none of the torpedo bomber planes was shot down, and they were able to execute their position and lock the Bismarck to launch torpedoes, but only 1 out of 9 torpedoes reached the target and hit the armor belt with no serious damage. The British force continued and engaged their target. Moments later, the German ship was out of range of Suffolk radar. At this point, Admiral Lütjens ordered 270 to starboard to avoid radar detection. Morning of 25th of May 1941, the Bismarck continues her course undetected. The German ship position is out of sights of the British radar. The mission to counteract the Bismarck is now out of possibilities and losing their hope. The German ship took advantage of being undetected. It takes only a short period of time, as their radio signals was detected by code breakers at Bletchley Park, that allows to locate their exact position, that was moving towards France. The chance of the British ships to locate the Bismarck's position was at low possibilities before she reached the safe zone at the range of Luftwaffe Air Base in France. The time pulled down against the British ships, as HMS Prince of Wales, HMS Suffolk, HMS Victorious, and HMS Repulse, is running out of fuel, and was not able to continue the search. At this point, only 3 of the British ships was able to continue the pursuit, the HMS King George V, HMS Rodney, and HMS Norfolk, where their position towards Bismarck was far. Morning 26th of May 1941, the British luck is on the air, as Catalina flying boat flown from Lough Erne in Northern Ireland, accidentally spotted a trail of oil slick on the sea, and moment later, the oil slick point the Catalina towards the Bismarck, just about 700 miles northwest of Brest, France. This is encouraging news to the British Royal Navy, who spent night and day of searching, but the Bismarck's position was near enough that in just a day, she will be at the safe zone where Luftwaffe and U-boats base. Again, the hands of time is about to close the chances to reach the German ship, hope still roaming around, and the only way to intercept the Bismarck was the Force H, a naval group under the command of Vice Admiral James Somerville. Vice Admiral Somerville was informed the Bismarck's position and quickly sent a light cruiser, the HMS Sheffield, to track the German ship. And HMS Arc Royal was ordered to launch torpedo bombers. But the first wave was not informed that HMS Sheffield was already on her way towards the enemy tracking the position. The bomber mistakenly identified Sheffield as Bismarck. Luckily, she was not hit by torpedoes. Later on, the HMS Arc Royal launched the second wave. At this time, the Swordfish Squadron is now on their position and aim the target to drop the torpedo. Bismarck anti-aircraft engage and fire on British planes, and finally the torpedo drops and hit the Bismarck twice. First torpedo hit the starboard side hull at her midship, and the second torpedo reached the stern and exploded and jammed the ship's rudders. At this very moment, the Bismarck lost her maneuverability due to the damage of her rudders. Even her mobility are not manageable for her to escape. The wounded Bismarck fire control and powerful armament are still intact and can still aim at her targets. And the next morning, the final battle has come, as the remaining of Admiral Tovey's ships, the HMS King George V and HMS Rodney, are now preparing their moves to face the mighty terror of the sea. The hunter become the hunted. HMS King George and HMS Rodney fired the first salvos at their target. The Bismarck returned fire, but her shells was short at her target. Her accuracy was decreased due to unmanageable movement of her damaged rudders. At the moment of the final battle, the British ships reach their target, and fire rises up on board the Bismarck deck, and later on, the two heavy cruisers joined the battle, the HMS Norfolk and HMS Dorsetshire. The British force fired broadside 10 shells in one blow. Moments later, the Bismarck suffer a ferocious damage, as 400 shells hit and cause a massive damage, but yet, the Bismarck refused to sink. Surrounded by British forces, the final end is about to come, as they leave and send back to port, due to low on fuel. The HMS Dorsetshire take the final blow. May 27, 1941, at 10:39 hours, the very final moments, as the hands of time turns back against the German ship, the Bismarck plunged to her death, and faced her final fate. And finally sank, and went down, with 2,221 crews,